Hey there, you me and DC fans, and welcome if you are new. I am Mantis Toboggan, and today we're going to continue on with the absolute Flash issue number 4. Let's go. All right, guys, welcome back again from our previous issue number 3 of Absolute Flash. We saw that Grodd and Wally become sidekicks and had this connection and had escaped the rogues along with everyone else that was trying to catch them. So let's see what happens after they got away from everything. So this issue begins with Wally still taunted by his inner thoughts. He's going through a relaxation technique that his mother had taught him. He has to say 5 things that he can see, 5 things that he can touch, and 5 things that he can hear. However, all the things that he's seeing and touching and hearing remind him of his mother and how she's never going to come back. The scene depicts uh, where Wally's mother was buried in the cemetery. As he walks up to his mother's grave and peers in, he sees Scary Barry, as I'm going to call him, down in the darkness, screaming, "Wally, help me!" Wally then says, "Barry?" As he sees Scary Barry reach out again, screaming, "Help me." Wally then wakes up as he's been asleep under a tree, and this wasn't actually happening. Realizing it was just a dream, he says, "Man, felt so real though." Grodd tries to console him, saying, "Wally, okay. Wally and Grodd are both okay." And then Wally complaining that it's too hot to sleep. They both get up and make their way out of the Iron Heights Park to find some food and a better place to stay. Wally, with his sidekick Grodd in his backpack, walking through Central City, trying to find food. They passed a wall that had Omega Men spray painted on it, referencing some of the events that is happening in Absolute Superman. Wally does find some food there. It's a food line, and he asks a man that's in line with, is this food free? Is this the line, to get in for food? And the man tells them, breakfast every Thursday and Saturday. And another man overhears their conversation as he interrupts, asking Wally, how old he is, and Wally responds, "What's it to you?" The man explains that his name's Ralph and that he runs a youth mission just about a block away. And then a kid named Linda walks by, confirming Ralph's offer that he does, in fact, run that mission down the road because his dad jokes, both Sue and Ralph there. So Wally continues to say he's okay, but, thanks anyway. And Ralph gives him his business card with the location of the mission and confirming that he is, in fact, not a serial killer. We flash on over to the site where Wally and Grodd made their previous escape, as the rogues, along with some scientists from Fort Knox and Colonel West, are trying to figure out the anomaly that Wally and Grodd had left behind. The trickster notices, saying,
It's a doorway.
She says,
I can almost see through to the other side.
The other rogues scream to her, "Jesse, don't," as she makes contact with it and explodes. Rudy tells Captain Cold, "Enough. You guys are done," telling him to go back and get reloaded, restocked, and ready to roll out to try and find Wally and Grodd. Snark is upset, saying, shouldn't they stay there and try and help them figure out what the anomaly was? West responds with, "You couldn't even contain a 15-year-old kid. We clearly don't need you trying to find out what the scientists can figure out." So they leave. Rudy heads back to Fort Fox to examine the site of the accident between Wally and Barry more closely. We find Wally has made it to the youth mission, where he's eating lunch and hands some of the food that he's eating, to Grodd, who's still in his backpack. Linda, the girl he met down at the food line, comes up and asks if she can eat lunch with him. So she sits down and she gives him some shit about his name being Wally because it's the same as her grandpa, but he kind of blows it off. He doesn't even acknowledge that dig. And she's very intuitive as she notices that Wally doesn't seem like he's from Iron Heights, telling him that he looks like he still has hope in his eyes, and that's how she can tell. Wally then explains that he's not from anywhere and that he's moved around a lot, as an army brat does tend to do. Linda uses her intuition and asks what he's running from, as Wally doesn't really want to answer the question. She kind of confides in him, saying, "We're all running from something. But again, she continues to advocate for staying put at the youth mission, and it's a good place to be. Wally asks what Linda's running from, and of course, she doesn't really answer his question either. She ends up giving or offering Wally her meal, as she tended to notice he finished his first meal like really fast. Next, we see Wally in his bunk room unpacking his stuff as Ralph walks in. Wally thanks him for the food and the place to stay. And Ralph gives him some toothpaste and some other things that he may need during his stay there at the mission. Ralph also explains that the rules of staying at the mission uh, to Wally is no drugs, no fights, and everyone's got to put in a little elbow grease with the cleaning and cooking. And
My fingers hurt.
Oh, well, oh, now your back's gonna hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty. Anybody else's fingers hurt? I didn't think so.
which Wally agrees to that, and Ralph asks him if he's going to be a problem, and Wally answers, "No, sir," giving some insight there to Ralph of his experience being around the military, at least structured past. He says, "Just call me Ralph. It's fine." Wally then opens the zipper to his bag after Ralph had last left, asking Grodd, "Do you think we can stay for a day or two here? They seem nice." Wally, thinking he's asleep, he opens the bag and finds that Grodd is not even in there. Surprised, he turns and looks outside the window and sees Grodd running away. Meanwhile, back at the lab of the accident, Colonel West is in there trying to figure out what had happened to Barry and what he was working on. As he's searching through the debris, Dr. Thawne interrupts him, asking what he's doing there. Rudy says the question was, what was Barry doing here? What was he working on? Dr. Thawne explains that they have a contract with Lazarus Corp, and Barry was the point man on the augmented weapons program, which, of course, she says, Colonel West, you should already know about that. He continues to ask questions of her about where the weapons and that the rogues are using came from. Dr. Thawne completely ignores this question, telling him his only mission is to provide security for their work, not to know what they're doing. Yeah, he doesn't really take that too well and says, "Don't give me that crap. We're way past any of that." She explains to him that Barry was exploring tangents of work, pieces that lay somewhere outside their original mission statement for the base. Colonel West, still upset, asks what happened to his son, and Dr. Thawne responds, "You saw what Wally did. All the weapons that they've developed doesn't stand a chance against him." Colonel West says, "He's a 15-year-old boy, not any of your test subject." And Dr. Thawne responds, "Well, he was a 15-year-old boy, but now he could be the weapon," which she obviously considers that a success. Colonel West is upset, saying, "He's not a weapon. He's still my son, and we have to undo whatever Barry did to him, whatever the accident did to him. We have to find him." Dr. Thawne says, "We know exactly where he is because we're tracking Grodd." And Rudy's responds, "Oh, why didn't you tell me? I've got a team ready. I can go find him right now." She says that you don't understand the full extent of what's going on here. Your son wasn't the only thing that escaped during that night of the accident. Next, we can see several capsules that are shattered from the previously contained experiments, some of them called Project 5X, Project Firestorm, Project Wizard, and Project Heatwave. These are all the same containers that Grodd was in that we saw earlier in this series. Wally and Grodd might be in some trouble, as Thrawn explains. Grodd is leading Wally directly to some of these other escape projects or experiments. We're back with Wally trying to chase down Grodd outside of the mission, following him into the sewer. Wally asks Grodd, "What are you doing here?" Grodd keeps saying, "Hot. We have to stop Hot." Grodd takes off through the sewer system again, and Wally follows closely behind. Wally clearly doesn't want to be here. He's like, "Let's just go back." Grodd stops and points at something down at the end of the corridor. "Hot," he says. The final page here shows one of those experiments that Thrawn was talking about as Wally and Grodd come face to face with Heatwave. And that's where this issue ends. All right, guys. Yeah, as we see here, things slow down a little bit for Wally's trying to, feel okay in his own skin. I think some of those visions have kind of stopped during his waking hours, at least, with the help of Grodd. He's still seeming to have nightmares about him. But he finds Linda at the mission, befriends her a little bit, but that little reprieve is short lived as he chases Grodd down and they run into their next villain, E-Wave. Yeah, this one's picking up, I think, here a little bit. We're going to see him try and gather and fight those other experiments. So that'll be cool. Again, thank you guys so much. Do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel as we're doing Absolute Superman, Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Martian Manhunter, Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Batman, and Absolute Flash. So please let us know if there are any other comic book series that you would like us to dig into and dive into that you want to see. And other than that, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, later.